I came here with three objectives today. If we meet these three objectives by the end of the session, I will just consider myself as an effective presenter. And by the end of this session, you should be able to describe some or all of the forces or factors that influence our experience of chronic pain, identify factors that have the potential to exacerbate or alleviate chronic pain, and come up with personal strategies to prevent or manage your own chronic pain. By the way, I see a hand up. Oh, Jagar, did you want to say something? You can type it in the chat box and we can answer it anytime. Okay, so before we go over these objectives, I just thought it could be helpful to get to know each other slightly more closely. And as Carissa introduced, my name is Duygu Gülseren. I am primarily a researcher in the area of workplace health and safety. And I also work as a consultant. I work with many organizations and provide coaching, assessment, program development services to them. And when I was preparing these slides, I presented my biography to AI, and it gave me this avatar. However, I'm not in the clinical field. My doctorate is in industrial and organizational psychology. I'm here today because I study chronic pain in the workplace, and I wanted to share some insights, practical insights about my research, as well as what we know in the field in general on this topic. And I just want to share that I'm not only a researcher, but I am also someone who is affected by chronic pain. I've been living and working with chronic pain for more than 15 years now. And now, I try to understand how people like me can have productive and meaningful and satisfactory work lives despite and with their pain. Yeah. I just read the comment in the Q&A. Okay. So, but before we start, just may I just get to know you a little bit? I know we don't, due to the setup, I'm unable to see any of you, and probably personal introductions can take a little long, but I thought we still could get to know each other. So I prepared a bunch of questions to understand what your occupation is and how long you've been in the work life. Please note that your answers will be anonymous, and but still, if you do not wish to participate in this exercise, you can still skip the poll questions. So I'll just try to find the polls first, and I will ask my first set of questions. I see the answers rolling now. Awesome. Okay, no more change in answers, so I will just share the results. So it looks like we have a balance of caregivers and non-caregivers in this group. And we have a very beautiful distribution. Well, maybe most of us are slightly more experienced than the others, but we still see a good distribution. And while almost half of us participated in a pain-focused seminar like this, the other half does not have this experience. Awesome. That is very helpful for me to know you. Okay, so let's go through three different profiles of caregivers. I mean, my examples are from caregivers, but you might find it relevant to yourselves as well. So our first case is Satish. So Satish is a dedicated surgeon with a passion for saving lives. And despite his commitment to his patients, Satish often finds himself working long hours in the operating room. So his chronic back pain stemming from, years of poor posture during surgeries and at work, and it is becoming increasingly debilitating for him. So he fears of the consequences of taking time off. So he just pushes through the pain. He relies on painkillers, and he's hoping that they will get him through the day. So his relentless work schedule and reluctance to prioritize his own well-being exacerbate his chronic pain, leaving him trapped in a cycle of discomfort and exhaustion. Our second case is Samaya. So Samaya has always had a nurturing spirit, which led her to pursue a career as a nurse. However, the demanding nature of her job, coupled with understaffing and high patient loads, has taken a toll on her physical as well as mental health. And despite experiencing chronic pain in the neck and shoulders, because she lifts patients and bends over beds for long stretchers, Sumaya realizes that her pain is impacting her ability to provide optimal care for her patients. So she asks her nurse manager for job accommodations like equipment or lifting patients and regular breaks for stretching. And she knows taking care of herself is vital, not just for her and for her patients too. And I see a hand up. I'll stop for a minute. And Wujagar, would you like to share your question? I see your hand up, and Michelle too. Okay. I don't see a question, so I'll just mark it as complete. So if you have anything, please use the chat box if you have a question. Otherwise, I will think that, it makes me quite
Hello.
anxious when I say, hi,
Yeah, hi. This is Ujagar from
hi.
Nicola Lodge. So yeah, my question is this: you are giving the example of Shati's overwork. It me too, as a like I'm the main earning hand in my family, so I'm also sometimes overworked. So sometimes I feel pain in the legs and the back.
Yeah.
So yeah, so for that one, sometime I do the exercises, sometime I go to the massage or the things. So yeah, I need to know how we can manage for ourselves and how I can help the others too for that one. The question is that,
Excellent.
yeah.
So this is a great question, and thank you. And I will actually give the answer to this question in the rest of my presentation. So I'll just keep continuing, and we can answer this question.
Okay,
How does
thank
it
you.
sound?
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Same here.
Okay, so I'll just so my third example is Nancy. Nancy is a paramedic, and she is always ready to help, those in trouble. But years of hard work and dedication put a toll on her knees, and now she has constant pain, especially during her shifts. So despite her toughness, and Nancy realizes that her pain is just a part of being a paramedic. And instead of seeing it as a setback, she accepts it as a part of her journey in life. And now she is focused to live a life aligned with her values rather than fighting pain. So I wonder, and now I have the next poll. So I wonder of these three examples, if there is anyone who resonates with you um, in one way or another, or slightly more than the others. And if there's no one who resonates with you, that's also fine. I'm just curious to see how you feel about these cases. And the answers are rolling. I see no more new answers, so I'll just end the poll and share the results. And it looks like we, again, have a very beautiful distribution and everyone finds something different in these cases. Awesome. Let's move on to the next part. So in this part of the talk, I will share a few definitions with you. And the first one will be the definition of pain. So many of us learn what pain is by ourselves. So we cannot feel other people's pain, like literally. And somebody cannot give us, feedback on whether the sensation that we are experiencing is pain or not. So therefore, no one else can teach us what pain is. For this very reason, we think everyone's experience with pain should be quite unique. And chances are we call pain when we refer to, different experiences. And I'm just curious about your definition of pain, and I will read it later on, but please feel free to use the chat box, not the Q&A box, but the chat box to define, to share your own definition of pain, if you feel comfortable. And in the meantime, I will move on to my next slide. So the International Association for the Study of Pain is the largest professional association that brings pain researchers and practitioners from different disciplines. And they came up with the following definition of pain. So pain is an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience that is associated with actual or potential tissue damage or described in terms of such damage. So here I would like to draw your attention to the underlined words. It is a sensory experience, it is an emotional experience, and it can be due to actual tissue damage or potential or perceived tissue damage. And there's another source, which is DSM, this is the manual for clinical psychologists, which they consult with diagnostic related questions. So they have a category of disorders labeled as pain disorder. And it refers to experiencing pain for a longer period of time. So they actually see, continuous long-term pain as a type of disorder. And the definition of chronic pain, which is pain lasting for more than 3 months, is how we define chronic pain. So in many instances, our pain can go away after a period of time, but in other cases, no matter what we do, it can stay with us. And we refer to those, persistent types of pain as chronic pain. And medical researchers define it as pain that is lasting longer than the usual healing time of tissue damage. But we typically take 3 months as the benchmark of the maximum healing time. So and in some cases, the chronic pain that can remain with us even after the tissue damage is healed. So it can be with us for long periods of time. And now that we learned the scientific definition of pain and chronic pain, I wonder, based on this definition, if you think you have chronic pain, and I will pull up my next poll. So based on this definition, do you think you have chronic pain? And how would you rate the impact of chronic pain on your work experience? All right, the poll is not moving at my end, so I think everyone who would like to share shared. I will end the poll and share the results with you. And looks like many of us in this group have been experiencing chronic pain based on these definitions, and the majority of us experience a moderate impact of pain on our work. Excellent. Thank you very much for sharing. So, and I also saw a definition. I didn't enable the chat for everyone. Oh, sorry. I thought I did. I am so sorry. There you go. You can see you should be able to type in the chat box now. Sorry. Okay. So now that we covered the basics of pain and chronic pain, we can move on to the workplace-related statistics. Unfortunately, chronic pain is a quite common experience, and about 25% of the general population, that includes kids, that includes elderly people, they report experiencing chronic pain. And we know that these numbers are even higher in the working age group. So we know, like this from the statistics, up to 40% of all working people experience chronic pain or report experiencing chronic pain. So I just recently reviewed WorkSafe BC's most recent report, and they cited chronic pain as the second most leading condition that results worker compensation claims in BC. You may wonder what the first one is. It is mental health disorders. And ironically, chronic pain and mental health disorders go hand in hand, and they feed each other. So they're not distinct experiences in that sense. Okay. So although many people would think chronic pain as a private and a personal issue, workplaces are often stakeholders in the experience of chronic pain. Why? First of all, work conditions can result in developing chronic pain, and therefore how work is organized and how it is executed can be a risk factor in the development of chronic pain. And secondly, even the pain has nothing to do with work conditions. Even if the work is not the cause of pain, an employee with chronic pain is still impacted by it. And this affects their productivity, this affects their attendance to work, overall well-being. And these are all critical outcomes for organizations. And we can even see that, especially like pain itself is not the problem, but the management of it can be a problem. So when it is mismanaged, we know that it can result in, heightened insurance costs and medical bills for organizations, as well as even to legal costs. And there's a recent study from the US, and they estimated the cost of chronic pain for American organizations as $216 billion annually. This is just in 1 year. And both these outcomes that you see on the slide, as well as this, crazy estimation, clearly shows that organizations pay the cost of chronic pain. By the way, I saw a definition in the chat box. I just want to read it. Thank you for sharing, Tina. So discomfort and limitation in performing ADL and tasks at work without experiencing smooth and nice movements. So thank you very much for sharing your definition. Okay. So, we discussed chronic pain as an organizational topic, but it's not only an organizational issue, it can also be a personal problem for those who experience it. And needless to say, when chronic pain is mismanaged, the person experiencing it can end up with, physical and mental suffering, as well as, in some cases, social isolation and financial issues. And there's this paradox with chronic pain. So on the one hand, many people need to rely on their work, their income, to be able to cover their pain related expenses, but on the other hand, pain can be debilitating, and it can result in work disability at times. And there's this paradox in the case of chronic pain too. So researchers, particularly medical researchers, used to believe that pain was a result of tissue damage. And about 2 decades ago, this assumption was replaced with the biopsychosocial model of pain. So this model argues that the pain that we feel can actually has 3 contributors. The first one is the biological factors, such as our genetic makeup, or the physical illnesses that we have, or the drugs that we use. The second factor are psychological factors, like how we think about pain, how whether we have fear of pain, whether we accept pain or not, like what our thoughts and feelings and psychological reactions to pain. And the third group is social factors, such as our cultural influences, how we are brought up, what we were told and taught about pain. So, for instance, in some religious communities, pain is, that there's this sharing that pain is what is a sensation or a feeling that brings people closer to God. In other communities, pain is definitely undesirable, intolerable. In some other cultures, pain is a punishment of something that we've done wrong. So there are social learnings and social influences that shape about our perception of pain, which can impact how we experience it. And this model received serious degree of support in research, and it's still considered the golden model of pain. So although the psychosocial model says that biological, psychological, and social factors shape our chronic pain experience, the relevance of these factors can show variations across individuals. And in this next poll exercise, I wonder if you feel comfortable enough to share which of these factors affect you the most, or you think affects your pain the most. And if you agree with this model. Excellent. We have such an interactive participating group today. I'm so happy to see your answers. And I see no more. Oh, okay. A few more folks are answering too. Okay, I see no more new answers. I'll just end it and share the results. Looks like everyone who participated in the poll agrees with the biopsychosocial model of pain, and seems like psychological factors seem to be affecting us slightly more than the other factors. Of course, you may have more than one factor, but this is just a discussion that we are having. Okay, to summarize, both of our work-related factors, like our working conditions and the tasks that we do on a daily basis, and personal factors like our genetic makeup, our lifestyle, our physical health, can influence our biology, psychology, and social life. In return, these biology, psychological, and social factors can impact pain, and this relationship is bidirectional. So our pain can impact our biology, psychology, social life as well, which can result in changes in our work and personal lives. So we've been talking about the impact of work-related factors in the development of chronic pain, but we haven't specified them yet. So if I asked what work-related factors would contribute to your pain experience, many people would say, physical working conditions and long work hours, or our job type, whether we do physical work or office work, as important contributors, probably. There is a very good study. It's a bit old, but it's a very good study conducted on and with Canadian workers. So researchers surveyed a nationally representative group of workers in Canada, and they asked for different work-related factors that might be related to chronic pain. And you see these factors on the slide, but Interestingly, in contrast to common sense, they did not find a impact of work hours or shift work or occupational category, job satisfaction, or even physical exhaustion on chronic pain. Um, but work stress showed is a significant contributor of chronic pain. So participants who reported having medium to high stress levels at work reported higher levels of chronic pain more significantly than others. And this is a bit surprising because in the presence of work stress, all the other factors that you see on the slide become non-significant for chronic pain, at least in this study. Then they teased out what exactly about pain and work stressors that relate to chronic pain. And they found that different work stressor types and you see them on the slide, particularly lack of skill discretion and high psychological demands showed as significant correlates of chronic pain. So people who reported having a lack of skill discretion and who had high psychological demands experienced pain more than others. And by skill discretion, they meant opportunities to learn and use new skills. And by psychological demands, they meant conflicting roles and demands from others, as well as working in a chaotic work environment. And as you can guess, I'm curious your experience now, and I will just ask your own experience. So, do you experience absence of skill discretion? Again, by that I mean lack of learning opportunities and new and different skill using opportunities, and psychological demands. And I also am curious about your experience in connecting between these factors to chronic pain. And the answers are still rolling. All right, no more new answers, and I'll just end the poll and I will share the results. So looks like the majority of us experience absence of skill as discretion sometimes at work, but the majority of us don't see a connection between lack of skill discretion and pain. And many of us always experience psychological demands at work, and the significant majority of us see a connection between psychological demands and pain. Thank you very much for sharing. Okay, so the findings that I shared in previous slides came from a sample of all occupational groups in Canada. But as you would agree, not all occupations are equal. And because this is primarily a seminar intended for caregivers, I want to show you findings from a study that specifically examined the association between work-related stressors in caregiving jobs and pain. And you can see a list of stressors that might be available in the caregiver's job on the slide. And here the list continues. And don't worry if you're unable to follow the slide, if you're unable to read or understand the tables, they are slightly harder to read. So I will share the findings with you verbally. So these researchers found that mental health issues experienced by participants, and these participants are nurses, they resulted in an experience of chronic pain among this sample of nurses. So among those, particularly stress, those who experience stress and experience somatic stress symptoms were the biggest contributors of chronic pain. And they also found that lack of trust between employees in the organization, as well as a lack of justice and respect perceptions, and low job satisfaction, they all related to the experience of chronic pain. And I wonder, as caregivers, I know many of you are caregivers and the other half aren't, but I wonder if the results of the study reflects your own personal experiences. So now comes my next poll. So do you agree that job stress and burnout as the biggest contributors to pain in your job? And I also saw a comment in the chat box. So Stacy says, I'm not sure as I've never considered the question in this way, but such a choice was not an option. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Stacy. Okay. I don't see any new answers. I'll just end the poll, share the results. And not surprisingly, many of us agree with the findings of the study, or they share the findings, the results of the study. Okay. All right. So you might say, okay, Duygu, we knew that several aspects of our jobs could be related to chronic pain experience, but some of these factors are beyond my control. Go tell about those factors to my boss, not to me. Why are you telling all this to me? And I think this is a valid question. In a way, you're right. Organizations have an important role to play in managing chronic pain, but there are other things that we as individuals can do to help ourselves as well. And this is not one way or another, but we need the efforts of both parties. Before I move on to the personal strategies, and I know we are, we don't have too much time, so I'll just, quickly wrap up this section. So my colleagues and I published a paper on this topic, and we recommended organizations four approaches, particularly to leaders in organizations in how they can support their employees who suffer from chronic pain. And first and the most basic of these approaches is the legal approach. So in many industrialized countries, including Canada, disability is a protected ground by the human rights legislation. So employees who disclose their disability, you don't need to share the underlying condition, but who discloses the disability and seek accommodation should be entitled to accommodation by law. So your employer cannot fire you because you have a disability. And chronic pain can be considered as a disability, in many circumstances. That's why employees with chronic pain are technically entitled to ask for accommodations in their jobs. And as long as they make it a formal disclosure and a formal accommodation request, they should be given their accommodations. The second approach is the human factors approach and ergonomics approach. So this is about the physical work conditions. So organizations who want to prevent chronic pain development or support employees with chronic pain can design physical aspects of the workplace in a more ergonomic way. The third approach is the job design approach. So this is about the roles and the responsibilities as well as relationships in the design of a job. And from research, we know that when employees with chronic pain are given autonomy and when their jobs require various use of various skills, they can manage pain better. Therefore, we recommend employers interested in this issue to incorporate more autonomy, to give them more control over their tasks and schedules and decisions, basically, and skill variety in the design of jobs. And lastly, we have the psychosocial approach, and this is about how social relationships and psychological factors can improve the experience of chronic pain. We will discuss this in more detail in the next section, but for now, it is important to know that positive relationships and positive social and psychological experiences can improve pain or pain outcomes. And that's why employers who are serious about addressing this issue can start doing so by building positive, trusting, and psychologically safe work environments. All right, so these recommendations were for organizations and organizational leaders, but as I said, as individual employees who also, we also have a role to play in improving our own chronic pain experience, both in the workplace and outside of the workplace. And in the remainder of this section, I will go over a few psychological approaches in the treatment and management of chronic pain. Here, I would like to make an important disclaimer. So researchers from various disciplines like medical fields, pharmacology, physical therapy, they've been working on different methods to improve pain. And psychologists also have been making some significant progress in this area, though they develop psychological therapies. So in the upcoming section, I will mostly share about those different psychosocial approaches, but please keep in mind that there are other medical and pharmacological, pharmaceutical, and physical methods to improve chronic pain as well. And I will particularly focus on the psychosocial aspect because I am a researcher of psychology. And secondly, and more importantly, so far we have underlined the huge role that our psychological factors play in chronic pain. Therefore, this is a worthy area of attention. And there are probably a lot of different therapeutic approaches above and beyond what I will share in a minute. This is definitely not an exhaustive list. I will just share the most common methods that are backed up by evidence. And I have one last disclaimer, and I promise I'll move on to my content in a minute. The strategies that I will share with you in a minute are originally developed in clinical and counseling therapies. But please note that I'm not suggesting that you should replace them with mental health care. I'm definitely not suggesting to become your own psychotherapist. What I suggest is in this section to be informed of different therapeutic approaches and be guided by their basic principles when we need to manage our own pain. You can also use this information to guide your own thinking and approach to yourself and your pain. But you may wish to see a mental health professional if you think you need clinical support. Okay. Our first approach is the supportive psychotherapy approach. And this was originally developed as non-directive talk therapy. So that means the role of the psychotherapist in a session is to listen to the client with unconditional acceptance, a great empathy, and the best effort to understand the client. And indeed, there's in this therapeutic relationship, there's no specific method or strategy, but just to listen and support and accept the person as they are. Although this approach has not exclusively studied on chronic pain in the chronic pain context, there's some general evidence supporting its effectiveness. The supportive psychotherapy approach could improve the mood and the emotional functioning of the client at moderate levels. And if we, take these basic tenets of this approach and apply it in our non-clinical lives, I can think of two ways. First of all, that means, we can make connections with people who show us unconditional acceptance, who won't judge us, who won't give advice to us, who will not try to solve our problems, but who will just be there, listen to us, and just accept us and support us. These people can be, our support systems, especially when we go through severe pain episodes. Second, if we have no one to support us in our immediate circle, we may try to show support to ourselves. I know it sounds easy and it may sound a bit even, too easy. But we can engage in self-talk. We can listen to ourselves. We can write down our thoughts. We can engage in accepting and empathic, conversations, inner monologues almost. I see this supportive psychotherapy approach is almost like becoming ideal parents to ourselves. We may, it's great if we have supportive people around us, but we can also support ourselves just by engaging in an internal monologue. The second group of psychotherapy approaches to the chronic pain are called self-regulatory therapies. And in these groups of therapies, the basic assumption is that when we have control over our emotional and physiological responses, we can exacerbate our chronic pain. So this is usually the times of emotional or physiological exhaustion. And in this approach, the key is to regulate our emotions and our reactions, not the pain, but our reactions. And there are different ways of using the self-regulatory approaches. The most common ones are relaxation techniques, and the others are biofeedback and hypnosis. I'm sure you're familiar with the relaxation techniques, such as deep breathing exercises or, muscle relaxation. The goal is to calm down our nervous system and stress responses so that we can regain control in our responses. And probably less well known is the biofeedback method. I won't go into detail, but in the biofeedback approach, you are actually connected to a machine. There are several different sensors connected to your body. And the role of these sensors is to monitor different stress reactions that we produce in the body, like body heat or, sweating or heart rate, and they give feedback to the individual to make them aware of their stress response, because we're not always aware when we have heightened body temperature, right? I don't know. I don't have the link with me, but Carissa, I shared it with Carissa. Maybe Carissa can share the YouTube link with us. There's a very good video that provides more in-depth information about the biofeedback method, if you're interested. And in essence, the biofeedback machine's job is to make the person aware of their stress responses and so that they can better control them. And lastly, we have the hypnosis method. And I must admit that I'm not very familiar with hypnosis. But in essence, the goal is to alter our attention and memory so that we can dissociate ourselves from the pain experience. And the goal is to reduce the neural activity basically associated with transmitting pain signals to the brain, give brain a break almost, so that it doesn't, send pain signals to our bodies. On average, the evidence shows small to moderate improvements in the use of self-regulatory approaches, and their effectiveness is typically on the pain intensity, functioning with pain, and mood. And unlike the supportive approach, the fundamental applications of self-regulatory techniques may not be directly implementable into our lives. We may need equipment, for instance, for the biofeedback approach, and we definitely need a trained person for the hypnosis approach. But we can easily adopt the relaxation technique, I think, and we can use muscle relaxation, breathing exercises, as well as stretching to regulate our stress responses, so that we have better control. And I see the questions, and I'll just answer them at the end, towards the end of the presentation. But I acknowledge the receipt. Okay, so next group of interventions are called operant behavioral interventions. And basically this approach is about identifying unhelpful or even harmful behaviors and substituting them with healthy and helpful ones. For instance, if you have pain and if you avoid exercising because you have pain, this can be a damaging behavior. So it can eventually lead to reduced physical functioning because use it or lose it, you may lose your functioning. And a person who adopts the operant behavioral perspective can identify avoidance as a unhealthy behavior, and they can replace them with a more healthier alternative, such as regular, mild exercise just to maintain functioning. And when you are in therapy, usually the therapist helps you to identify those unhelpful behaviors and guide you and support you with finding and implementing the healthier ones. But if you don't have a therapist, we can try to do this, in our non-clinical context as well. So we can either pay extra attention to our helpful and unhelpful or healthy and unhealthy behaviors, or we can ask feedback from others. Because we are running out of time, I'll just quickly say that we know there's this approach offers small to large improvements in pain outcomes, and it can be a very promising approach if you among the list that I will share, this probably has a slightly higher potential for help. Next, we have the cognitive behavioral approach. The effectiveness of this approach is quite well established in the clinical psychology literature. Basically, it suggests how we think and make judgments about ourselves and the world around us can impact our behaviors and outcomes. And in the context of chronic pain, is identifying unhelpful thought patterns, which may contribute to our pain experience. So, for instance, if you say, I will never be able to enjoy this life again because I have a terrible pain, it's hopeless, it's permanent. This message not only is pessimistic, but it's also not helpful. Like, what if you acknowledge that everything is so bad? Probably this type of thinking damages us because we may feel stressed, depressed, we may withdraw from different activities in life, and eventually we can give ourselves more harm than good by engaging in unhelpful and harmful thinking. So in the therapy room, a therapist helps you again identify those negative thought patterns. But if you would like to, use the learnings from this approach in your non-clinical lives, maybe you may want to write down your thoughts about chronic pain on a piece of paper without any limitation, any restriction, and then you can go over them with a more critical eye. So, is this thought helpful or unhelpful? Is this really helping me or giving me more harm? And again, the research shows that cognitive behavioral therapy shows small to moderate improvements, but clinical psychologists typically consider it as the golden standard in psychotherapy. Okay, our next group of approaches are called acceptance mindfulness therapies. Again, in essence, this approach suggests that we experience pain as a result of interaction between our thoughts and sensory input. That's why this approach recommends paying attention to our bodily sensory inputs and accepting them as they are. So in the pain context, that means we can just pay attention to the signals that our bodies give and just accept them as information about our bodies without labeling them positively or negatively. And in research, we know that acceptance mindfulness-based therapies offer small to moderate improvements in functioning and emotion, like mood. And if we want to implement those approaches into our lives, we may just, allocate a few minutes here and there, do a quick body scan and notice where we feel the sensations and what does it tell to us, and, without any judgment or any other labeling. Okay, next we have emotionally expressive approaches. And up until now, we repeated the role of our judgments and thoughts in experiencing pain. And this approach argues for the role of emotions in particularly early childhood experiences and psychological traumas in experiencing pain. And it argues that the brain forms very strong connections between certain emotions and pain when we experience trauma. Whenever those emotions are experienced, invoked, the body responds with pain because of this very strong connection. It's hard to separate them from each other. Subsequently, in the emotional expressive method, individuals can improve their chronic pain by processing the emotions that they avoid or disassociating them from the pain experience. And again, the argument is that neural overactivation in the brain can be dampened. I'm not very well informed, so I don't want to mislead you by providing more information. But we know from the evidence that there's small to moderate improvements in functioning and emotional distress in this approach. I personally would be hesitant to adopt this approach without clinical guidance. That's why I'm not able to recommend any methods. But in general, we know that artistic pursuits can be safe and helpful ways of emotional expression, regardless of pain. Okay, lastly, we have psychologically informed physical therapy. And in this approach, we combine the cognitive behavioral therapy with physical therapy. There is limited evidence on its effectiveness. There's definitely more research needed on this area. And we know that for now, at least the available evidence shows that they have small effectiveness on functioning of individuals. Okay. On the slide, you can see a summary of these therapeutic approaches. I shared those to provide an overview of different views. We can still, develop our own strategies by being informed by these clinical methods. But I will reiterate that being informed on these approaches do not substitute mental health support. So if you feel you may need clinical support, I urge you to see a mental health professional. And before we close today's session, I will just invite you for one last poll and see what your thoughts are in these approaches. So would you like to give any one of those a try? Would you, does any one of those resonate with you more than the others? Let's see what you will say. And Carissa, Um, I have one last slide, but I see some questions and I want to answer those. Can we just stay for 3 more minutes?
Yeah, sure. And if you want to provide that YouTube link.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I shared them with Sibone, but okay, I'll share it to you as well so that we can end it in the recording at least. Okay, I'll just end the poll. I see no more changes. Okay. So looks like different tools seem to be helpful for different people. So I see a very beautiful distribution of our willingness to try these different approaches. I'm happy to see this distribution because yeah, these are the tools in our toolboxes, right? Okay, so I will recap what we discussed today. So we learned that pain is an emotional and sensory experience. It can be about real or perceived tissue damage. We learned that, sometimes it can last longer than 3 months. We discussed that it can be different than acute pain. We discussed the biopsychosocial model. We went over different therapeutic approaches, and we discussed how we can adopt them. I actually asked AI to make a song with the summary of this session, and I'll share the link with you, but it doesn't let me click at the moment. I need to probably take down the the slides for it. But if you want to give it a try, please listen to our AI-generated chronic pain song. So I really enjoyed being here with you today. These are my online coordinates. Please feel free to connect, and I am looking forward to your questions. To be able to do that, I'll just stop sharing my slides. I will go back and find the AI link. And for the YouTube link, I will share it with you, Carissa, after this talk. I thought you might have it, but I will share it with you. And then I see lots of questions. I will answer them. And this is the link to the song. Okay, so I see one anonymous comment, and this person says, doctors never want to deal with our pain. They just keep giving the runaround and more referrals. I personally agree with you. My experience is also similar, but you never know. Sometimes you will have a great doctor who will be interested in with you. Can people with PTSD, and Michelle says, thank you, and thank you, Michelle. Can people with PTSD from workplace have chronic pain that is not phantom pain, as pain is mostly physical and mental, not just mental pain? Well, I mean, there are studies that shows that people can experience pain without any physical symptoms of pain. So pain can be a product of our brains. It doesn't have to be connected to a tissue damage. If you remember from the definition of it, we defined it as actual or perceived tissue damage. So it can, at least some evidence shows that we can feel pain without having bodily damage. What if we don't have people supportive people around us? And I think I answered this question. If we don't have supportive people around us, I think this question was about the supportive approach. We can try engaging in self-talk. That means just, go for a walk by yourself, share, literally verbally share what you think about, how you feel and what you want, and just, listen to yourself as you say those. It's like playing chess with, as a single person. Like, you can play the both sides. So it requires some perspective taking, but I think we can still talk to ourselves. And there's a question about biofeedback. What is biofeedback? I mean, it's the machine, basically. It gives you feedback on how your body shows stress responses. So it says, well, now you have heightened body temperature. Now you are sweating. Now you have, your brain waves are changing. Now your body is, starting to show reactions, stress reactions. It just gives you feedback on the things that we may not be very aware at a conscious level. And individuals are expected to use those signals to control their reactions. But you can Google biofeedback. There are very good videos on YouTube on biofeedback, and it not only explains but also shows the biofeedback machine as people engage with it. So you might find it helpful.